Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to another cutting edge action video. Today I'm going to be comparing the Benchmade Mini Freek model 565-1 with the carbon fiber scales up against its big brother, the Benchmade Super Freek if you will. This one is the Freek model number 560BK-1 with G10 for the handles. Now these knives are very cool. They are basically large and small versions of each other with different materials for the scales, and in my opinion they have different users. So let's get into it. Although these knives are in the same family, they're quite different than they might initially appear. And on this channel, I want to focus more on the actual use of a knife rather than just the specs of it. So here's a quick chart comparing the two, and we can get the specs out of the way. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and talk about how these knives are to actually own and operate and use. Alright, so as for the Mini Freek, this is definitely one of my absolute favorite knives that I own. With S90V steel and carbon fiber, this knife will retain an edge through just about anything, and you'll be able to cut through anything with ease, although you might have a little bit of difficulty sharpening it. The Mini Freek is also absolutely excellent looking. It's flashy enough to catch the eye of a collector, but subdued enough to be invisible to a non-knife person. The carbon fiber is beautifully done, and the curvature of the handles is absolutely excellent. As you can see, the curvature on this knife and the ergonomics and the way it feels in the hand are just perfect with the jimping. You have a nice place to rest the edge of your thumb on this blade because it slopes upward slightly here. The ergonomics are just excellent. The red thumb studs here, along with the red barrel spacers at the back of the knife, give it just a little bit of a splash of color, but not too much. The blade is polished to a near but not perfect mirror finish. It catches the light really nicely, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. The action on this is also probably my favorite out of any of my Benchmades. It's extremely snappy, extremely fast. You can flick it open with ease. Just move your thumb and your index quickly on the axis lock, and this thing just absolutely flies open. It's a dream to activate the action on this knife. The thumb stud on this one provides excellent ergonomics, and I really get a feel for exactly how much force I need to use to flick the blade open. I almost never fail when I'm trying to deploy this knife with the thumb stud. It just flies right out of there really smoothly, really easily every single time. On the less positive side for the Mini Freek, I still think it's overpriced at $263 even with the use of S90V and carbon fiber for the construction. It's a lot of knife for your money, but it's still a little knife for your money. This thing is small, and you can tell when you're using it that it is small. The blade centering on mine is decent, but not perfect, as you can probably see right now. I'm hoping the camera can get a good angle on it there. But at this price point, I think it's reasonable to expect that the blade centering would be better than that. And we all know that Benchmade seems to have a fairly consistent problem with getting the blade centering wrong. The short length of the handle on the Mini Freek can sometimes make it difficult to get a good grip when you're opening and closing it. I'm 5'11", so this might not be a problem for some people, but it can get real slippery, the carbon fiber, especially when you start to get some grime on your hands throughout the workday. it can be difficult to get a nice grip on this knife to try to activate it with the axis lock or with the thumb stud. And I feel like that's going to be the main point of failure on this knife when you go to deploy it. Overall, I think I would recommend the Mini Freek to a collector looking to get into a discreet but still very cool high-end EDC. This knife is probably never going to break regardless of what you throw at it. It cuts through everything very, very nicely. It's extremely sharp, it holds an edge well, and it is truly a great EDC. Now, as for the Super Freek, or the 560BK-1, this is basically a larger version of the 565, and it's done in this crazy wave G10 pattern, and I think it just looks excellent. It looks awesome. It's got red G10 for the liners, as you can see, that looks really nice, along with red back spacers, and then you've got a partial steel liner for the axis lock assembly, which is nice for the rigidity of the knife. The handles are very nicely molded, and they for sure provide significantly more grip than the carbon fiber scales on the 565, especially when they're wet or when your hands are grimy. This knife features M4 steel, as you can see right here, and it is black Cerakoted. It looks excellent with the black Cerakote on it. That really adds to the overall appeal of this knife. With the M4 steel, this knife feels nice and rigid, and it still maintains an edge very nicely. And the action on my Super Freek isn't quite as nice as it is on the 565. I think it's nicer on the Mini Freek, but this one is close. The action is still very good. You'll have to forgive me for missing a few of these fires here, but it's difficult to do it while holding my hands over the desk and trying to use my microphone. But I'm still able to deploy this knife fairly easily, but sometimes I do miss a fire and I misgauge how much force I need to apply with the thumb stud or how long I need to keep the axis lock to press, but the action is still a dream to use on this knife. Overall, I think the Super Freek is probably more practical than the Mini Freek, just because these G10 scales give you something much nicer to hold on to, and they make it much easier to use the knife, especially over longer periods of time. In my opinion, the beautiful carbon fiber work and the nice mirror polished blade make the 565-1 just a little better looking than the Super Freek, but I don't think the Super Freek looks bad at all. I think it's still a great looking knife. I just happen to think the 565 looks a little better. Now, to wrap this video up, I don't think picking a winner really makes sense after looking at these knives critically and carrying them a lot to make this video. These knives are either for different use cases or for different people. Even though they're in the same family, they have really different characteristics, and the Super Freek being so much larger just makes it a different knife for a different use case. I think they're both great in their own regard. If you want an extremely competent EDC that just about disappears in your pocket, then go ahead and get the Mini Freek 565-1 in carbon fiber with the S90V steel. If you need to do a little more serious work for long periods of time, then go ahead and get the full-size Super Freek 560BK-1 with the G10 scales, because they're much more comfortable and much more grippy. And if you love spending too much money on things to stare at obsessively like me, then go ahead and get both of them. This has been another Cutting Edge Action video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Go ahead and leave a like, get subscribed, and hit the bell if you're not subscribed already. This has been Cutting Edge Action.